I'm on my Jawn, as my brother says today. I want to talk about colorism and light skin privilege as it applies to my Philadelphia experience, because I believe Philadelphia practices colorism in its own unique way. It seemingly was invented in West Philadelphia. In my previous upload, I talked about Otis Lawrence Graham. I call him the Black Boule Whisperer. He was such an insider to this Black elite society that he wrote a book, Our Kind of People. If that doesn't describe the whole vibe of the Black Boule, I can't tell you. But I experienced colorism as it is practiced in Philadelphia, like I said, because of my family origin. My family being from West Philadelphia, the stories that they told growing up, my mother and father, it gave me a certain understanding about Philadelphia. And being that Philadelphia is the birthplace of the Black Boule, I think that our experience growing up in Philadelphia is rather unique. I will illustrate this through my own origin. I come from two people that were so oddly matched that it's a miracle I'm even here. But I'll just say my mother came from this light-skinned West Philadelphia family, and she and her siblings, they prided themselves on being pretty. So they were pretty people with good hair. You know, we'll talk the politics of hair and skin color within the Black society, okay? Now we're talking Black people here. So I want to remind you that this stuff goes on within. So my mother being from the West Philadelphia light-skinned middle-class family, then my dad comes from a poor family. Now he was the result of an affair, let's just say. So an affair into the Washington family. Now the Washington Philadelphians, they are very bougie, and some of them, they pass for white. Now, we'll talk about passing. I have a great-grandmother who passed for white, but she didn't do it very well, because when she would hear people talking against her race that she claimed, which were the American Negro, so she would go like crash out on white people if they were talking about her people, but she's passing for white. So you can imagine all of the cognitive dissonance that goes on with a person who's passing, and the mental illness, because she did suffer severe alcoholism. I would see her coming around a corner drunk, falling down drunk, and she's this white lady. You know, I'm thinking, what is going on? They're like, that's your great grandmother. That's how I met her, actually. That's my first memory of her. My mother talks about parties that she attended growing up in West Philadelphia. And you may have heard of the brown paper bag test. This was to test whether you could enter one of these parties. And if you were darker than a paper bag, you were not welcomed. So my mom did tell me that I would barely make it into these parties. So really wild stuff, okay? My dad, being very deeply melanated, he would often act as a bouncer for some of these parties, okay? So he's on the outside, yet kind of getting in the inside. Because a lot of times, men that are darker melanated, they prefer women like my mother who are very fair-skinned, because it is seen as more beautiful, more feminine. And this is talked about in many circles, and many other cultures deal with it, such as the various Spanish-speaking cultures, the Latino cultures, and Hispanic and Indian cultures as well. You could go on TikTok and listen to a whole litany of experiences from those cultures as well. But I want to deal with the experience in America through the Black Boule. After my father's death, I was able to see a lot more and understand why things are the way they are in my family in particular and in Philadelphia. So my dad, being that it was actually his mother was the result of an affair in the Washington family. So that causes, when you think about it and you wonder, why are we not close with certain family members? We don't understand until we have that backstory. So if that baby came as a result of an affair, then of course you're not going to have the family ties and those cousins and, the closeness. So the Washingtons of Philadelphia, I'm not really, I don't know them as well. Although my dad did, get accepted by them, he really sought relationships with them because he ended up becoming an orphan. I told you that my dad was taken in by the Oblate sisters, the black nuns, and they gave him a very elite Catholic education, and he became an elite basketball player in Philadelphia, the high schools, the Catholic leagues and all that. And he was going to be playing for the Pistons, but he took another route. And it was through my father's relationship with the Oblate sisters that he was adopted by a very prestigious Black society woman. She was a widow from Chicago, and her name was Stormy, okay? And Stormy, she had a very, very elite beauty salon, and she was in the hair industry in Chicago, very big. She was the type of person that she only had clients that had a certain grade of hair, as you know the term good hair. She didn't do hair like my texture usually. She did give me a family pass, okay? So I didn't have the type of hair texture that, her circle of people in that society of Chicago had. So my grandmother Stormy, she wanted my father to marry Joe Lewis's daughter, Jackie Barrow. But my dad didn't, I guess, prefer her, but she did have everything. She came from a family, a Black Boule family, and she was very light-skinned. And, he just didn't see her that way, more as a friend. And that is how Aunt Jackie became my godmother. So she was still in my life, and we had a really close relationship. So it's interesting because I have the Chicago thing, and I was born outside of Chicago, but raised in Philly. So both Boule cities, the Chicago Boule and the Philly Boule, I know a lot about, okay? So I want to also just say that in families where colorism is practiced, like it is in Philadelphia, the children that are not paper bag brown, they don't pass that test. They go through a lot of their own trauma, and I suffered a lot of issues because of the comparison when you have the light-skinned cousins and they have certain kind of hair. I mean, I could get into a whole thing. I could write a book about it, okay? But I had an uncle. He passed on, and he was deeply melanated, very, very deeply melanated, a handsome man. And I could discern a lot about what it was like for him to grow up in my family. And I do believe, in my opinion, he had a lot of issues. And he only preferred to deal with white women. So that could be, we could look into that, right? But I just want to end this segment of the Philadelphia colorism and politics by saying that with this upcoming debate in Philadelphia, it made me think about Kamala Harris and the identity of race and color and gender and things like that are being discussed around her. And I believe, in my opinion, that Kamala is being given a pass because of the way she looks. And when you look at Indian culture and the colorism in their culture, it starts to make sense to me. And I think that she's being given a pass, and she has a privilege. She has pretty privilege and also light skin privilege. So I want to talk and explore those kind of things as I talk more about Philadelphia. I want to upload a lot of content probably today and going forth, that I want to get your opinion about a lot of things, especially what I just brought up, that I believe Kamala Harris is being given a pass and a privilege because of the way she looks. Because, okay, we had another woman that did run for the presidency, but I don't believe that she could get the pass because of how she looked, okay? Her color, they don't even bring her up in history like it never happened, okay? So that's all I want to say on that, and I will catch you for another upload.